From 1989 until October 1990, I was a Commonwealth Scholar at the University of Peradeniya in Sri Lanka, an island nation off the southeast coast of India. Today, that period is known as the Second JVP Insurrection, an armed revolt targeting the government but using subversion, intimidation, and ultimately murders and assassinations not only of politicians and their armed forces, but of ordinary civilians. But I, and the friends I made during this time, could not be aware of the full scope of the insurrection as it unfolded, seemingly in slow motion. Like a frog put in a pot of lukewarm water set to a slow boil, I did not always perceive clearly the reality that surrounded me as I wrote upbeat letters home about my travels and my studies, and as I poured out my frustrations over barriers of language and bureaucracy in my journals. The hundreds of pages of my thoughts and doings are the subject of this series of vignettes. They trace my meandering path, not to the master's degree I thought I was pursuing, but to a greater humility about the passions and pride, the courage and convictions of a people that persevere in one of the most beautiful and troubled countries in creation. Here is a story from my sojourn in Sri Lanka. Journal entry, Arunachalam Hall, 22nd May, 1989. Well, I had something of a record today, with old unreliable still on transport board. Amidst Tate's friendly protests, I raced to Talgahapitiya Junction with Anuramalli just in time to catch the Gampola bus, which would take me all the way to campus. I even got a seat, but the conductor broke the bad news. It was only going as far as Kurunegala today, though I couldn't follow the reason he gave. It had the tone of something inevitable. Well, no problem, so long as it wasn't the Hartal Anuramalli mentioned, the JVP protest against National Heroes Day. We barreled along to Hettipola. Where the driver and so on got out for tea, or so I thought. He pointed at the tire, and all of a sudden we were told to get on another full bus, no seats. Fine. The bus belched along, but I could see we were in trouble again when the inevitable squatters and idlers by kades, roadside shops, pointed at one of the tires. We stopped at Warakapola and were ordered off. It started to rain. We crammed onto yet another, even fuller bus. I stared at hands and armpits and blocked air vents for the next hour. Arriving in Kurunegala at 9:30, I queued with the growing crowd for an hour. Inevitably, stragglers claimed all the seats before the first dozen in the queue got on. We were off. For the first 5 miles. Then the driver started finding his engine was not about to tackle an incline of more than 5 degrees, so we turned around and drove back to the Kurunegala bus depot. where the crowd stared dumbly inside the compound. 3 more candy-bound buses passed us by. 15 minutes later, we were back on the crippled bus, rumbling back to Kurunegala proper, where it was rumored we'd get another bus. We waited from 11:30 to 12:20 before a new automatic transmission bus appeared, and we, along with another 20 stragglers, packed on. Vroom, hum, bliss. Even if I was standing between the legs of 3 people seated on a double seat, resting my head between my suspended arms, I woke up in Mawatagama when the bus stopped. Something was wrong with the oil. My blood pressure rose when we hobbled into the bus stand, and my head nearly exploded when we turned around and the driver started heading back to Kurunegala. To Kurunegala, I asked. Yes, we'll get another bus. I jumped off, fuming. Forgetting any refund, I hailed the next private coach and wedged myself acrobatically for the spine-bender remainder of the trip. What amazes me, in retrospect, is not that because of 4 bus breakdowns it took me 7 buses to get to campus from the village, rather than my usual 2 or even 1 bus. It was that moment when the bus died in Mawatagama. Now, most of the folks had been, like me, waiting to get to Kandy since 9:30 a.m., and it was then 1 p.m. Yet, when it was clear the driver was heading back to Kurunegala, no apologies were offered. There were no howls of abuse, no rants about incompetent employees failing to check the buses for roadworthiness before packing them with people, not even a murmur of disgust. Am I wrong to draw lines of relevance to this island's worsening crisis? Have I become more of a racist than when I arrived? A footnote to the last bus ride. 2 ancient men, one with wounds on his feet, the other a dignified Muslim complete with a PLO shawl, had to cling to the bars as 2 20-something strapping monks lounged in comfort on the seats the state reserves for them. While on the private bus, an open army jeep with a dozen green berets flew by. On the floor, between their legs, bouncing on their knees, were 3 blindfolded prisoners in trousers. The soldiers laughed as they passed us. The bus folks stared. Some smiled at having had the opportunity to see some action drama just like in the movies. Well, in retrospect, 31 years later, it now seems clear to me that all CTP buses were being targeted for sabotage that day by JVP militants, and that everyone but me was aware of it. What I was characterizing as a frustrating fatalism among my fellow travelers was more likely a grim recognition that we were lucky to be making the progress we were. One of the first songs I learned in Sri Lanka is called Akuru Mekine by Edward Jayakodi. It's about remembering lessons learned long ago. The lyrics at the end of the song say, "Let's start learning while we're young. The letters are not erased. The images have not faded. I still remember it as before, those lessons from my little book." Perhaps I'm not remembering those lessons the way I wrote them, now that 30 years have passed. Rereading my thoughts that day of the endless bus marathon, I'm learning how easy it is to judge without understanding, and to mistake passivity for great courage.
මතකයි ඕඩි පොතේ පාඩම්